Welcome back, wannabes and creators, to another episode of The Complete Creative, the podcast that helps you build and maintain a successful creative business. And today on the show, we have my friend Ray Anthony Height. Ray Anthony Height has drawn for Archie, Zenescope, Marvel, and he has his own creator-owned book at Action Lab, Midnight Tiger. I've known Ray for a long time, but I just recently worked with him on an anthology I edited called Cthulhu is Hard to Spell, The Terrible Twos, which is currently on Kickstarter at cthulhuishardtospell.com. And I wanted to find out a little bit more about his process, do a couple of special episodes while the Kickstarter is going live, get some synergy, and Ray Anthony Height is a great person to give us some perspective on what it takes to maintain an art career between indie, smaller publishing companies, bigger publishing companies, all the way up to Marvel. So I hope you enjoy this one. If you did, please go check out Cthulhu is Hard to Spell at cthulhuishardtospell.com or thecompletecreative.com and check out all of our epic blog posts, courses, and such. But I am so super pumped about this anthology, and Ray Anthony Height's work is amazing in it, and I hope you do head on over to Kickstarter and check it out. That being said, let's get on with the show. Take it away, Ray. Tell us what you're passionate about these days.
I'm passionate about comics, and I know that's vague, but it is the main focus of my life right now. So, as I know it is for you too. So, there's so much that we can do. I mean, I think we're just scratching the surface of all the things that comics can become. So.
Did you see the Kickstarter for Ryan K. Lindsay's last book?
No, I haven't actually.
So it was Skyscraper. It was all told in the same basically a page of a skyscraper, and the only thing that changed was the dialogue and a little bit of what happens inside of the skyscraper. It was all like the outside of a skyscraper, and they would like cut in at different places as they were trying to solve this mystery. It was such a cool like concept that I had never seen done before.
That's pretty awesome. Like,
yep.
Seriously.
Yeah, but those are the kinds of things that I look forward to seeing. Not that I don't like the old, I still like a good regular comic book, but like I really enjoy being in this era of comics because there seems to be no limit to the creativity that people will put out there.
I agree. Actually, that's one of my favorite things. I love when people start experimenting because, when someone else brings in a new idea, a new concept, it kind of really broadens the way you think about the things you do. So each time somebody does that, it helps. It helps the community in a big way. Yeah.
So I saw Cats, the movie, and I certainly didn't think it was as bad as people thought because like I knew that Cats is just a kind of weird, odd, some would say horrible musical with like just doesn't make any sense. It's just like completely nonsense, but like in a wonderful way. And I thought the movie was like representative of like, well, I looked at it and I was like, that's the like it's literally unfilmable, and they filmed it, so like that is what you would get if you tried to make Cats well. That's kind of like the best possible iteration of what Cats could be as a movie. But I left the theater and I was like, but I absolutely appreciate that like Tom Hooper took an enormous swing at like making something wholly weird that like shouldn't have worked. It ended up not working, but I thought it demonstrated like how far you could still push a medium, and that a studio was willing to back $100 million movie with a bunch of like Idris Elba dressed up as a cat and a bunch of people with cat breasts and such. Like it was completely bat bonkers, but I appreciated like that it was maybe not an evolution, but at least pushing it to a place that I had not seen a movie go, probably for good reason before.
Right. I mean, quite honestly, I feel like that's a lot. We take more risk. Well, you know what? Yes and no. I think let's call it. I was born in 74, and I'm a child of the 80s, but I always like retro stuff. And Barbarella was one of my favorite, films, and also the original Flash. And those things were just crazy psychedelic fun, and kind of now a timestamp of that era. But during that time, they were pretty experimental, and some of it was panned. Like, oh, this is some kind of goofy, weird comedy. And now most people that I know who talk about those films, they love them. They absolutely love them. And with Cats, I haven't seen it. I have definitely seen and heard some of the reviews, but a swing and a miss is still a swing. So
absolutely, and especially when look, I'm not a cat defender here. Like, the end of a movie, she just turns to the main cat turns to the camera and says, "Do you know what the difference between the main thing about cats is that they're not dogs," and like that's the big number. It's like they big scream like cats are not dogs. So I'm not a defender of cats. I'm just saying that and doing this for a long time, it's very easy to make something safe. Like, you can go and you can pitch safe, and like if you have a little bit of a name, safe will get you a job. It may not get you the recognition. It may not get you an Oscar, but like there is always a job for the same thing done again.
Oh yeah, I mean it's when you follow trends. So talking about, I'm glad we're on the subject, because I was thinking about the Martin Scorsese's and whoever else has made comments about the Marvel films. At the end of the day, I mean, the people are talking about, like Jennifer Aniston says, she doesn't want to live life on a green screen. I understand that too. And all of them are talking about the job is shrinking and what's cinema and what isn't. But at the end of the day, it's the studios. The studios make those decisions, and the studios want to make money. And if there's a trend where these movies are making billions of dollars, that's where they're going to put their money, because they want a return. If you want, to do films you want to do, there are scripts out there. I'm sure that all of those actors and directors or whatever have scripts that they see and stuff like that. And they also want to make money. But they're also rich. And it's kind of like, well, just do what you want. You have the money to fund whatever it is you're doing. If you want to make a film, I mean, like The Irishman, which I'm only halfway through. I like it. It's definitely a Scorsese, canon kind of thing. Like it's in his wheelhouse, is what he does. And he's very good at what he does. But if you want to do that, you have the money to do it. Don't complain about the studios, I mean, that's just it. Use your own money if you care.
Yeah, so I have a little bit of different take on this. It becomes so when I was coming up, the money didn't so much matter because I wasn't doing this full time, so I was able to take a lot bigger swings. Even until a couple of years ago, I wasn't making really good money, like the kind of money that like I would hire 70 people to do a book, or like I didn't have these like huge projects that I was trying to develop. And so taking these swings, or a bunch of swings, or taking cuts, or like going to these small shows that like didn't end up panning out, because it didn't have a ton of production going on and like that money wasn't flowing already, I could do them. But when it came to, so last year, I had the worst run of releases I've ever had. Like, I had spent $17,000 to build this, to test out this product, and I only made about $2,000 on it over the first like 6 months of launch, which is abnormal for me. Usually, I'll make at least my money back at launch. So it sent me scrambling, and I was like, oh my God, that was my plan. Like, that was my year. My year was built around these launches that were completely different. They were novels. They were not like comics. I was doing them on Amazon, not Kickstarter. Like, I was going to like completely reinvent the thing. And I had the balls to think that like they would just work out without like much headache, even though I was switching platforms and formats and all of these things like literally simultaneously. And what ended up happening was, even though in my little like I'm a very little niche with my own little following there. And like when people didn't follow me, suddenly I was like, oh my God, like this is what happens when like you try something new and it doesn't work out. Like this is like the bankrupt or bust moment. Like this is I need to get a hit in the next 3 months or I have no idea what's going to happen. So I do think that even when you are mid-career or just a mid-career artist, it becomes a lot harder to break out and have those big swings, which is why I appreciate people like Tom Hopper and other people and creators who like in the middle of their career, they're just like, nope, I'm putting out something completely in left field, because having just gone through that, I know the odds of it working are so low that it might push the medium forward. It might be the hit. It might be the biggest hit of your career, but like, God, the odds of doing something outside of your lane working, especially once you've got a lane up and operational, are so hard.
Yeah, absolutely. I honestly feel like, the failure makes success. I mean, you can't have one without the other. So when you take those swings, there's definitely a level of calculation involved, but a lot of it is let's throw something at this and see if it sticks. Here's an avenue I haven't tried. Here's an idea I haven't tried. And it's all, no matter how much you plan and, you do the numbers and you do all these things, it's really up to the audience to decide whether this works or not. And that's really it. And if that particular group, my wife and I have this term, which is a wrong group, where you do something and it doesn't seem like there's something that's off or doesn't fit or something like that. Sometimes you're just playing to the wrong group or the wrong venue or whatever, and that is okay. That's okay. You find your group and you find a place or people that play. So, but you learn, and you don't know that until you do it. And I applaud you, because it sounds like you did similarly to what I did with my first Kickstarter in like 2014, 2013, whatever it was. And it was early on, during the Kickstarter beginnings. And I succeeded, with the Midnight Tiger campaign, the first one. And, I think it was like final total was like $7,000. But I didn't know about shipping. I ended up costing me another $2,000. And I got out as much as I could. I did as much as I could, but it was a monster. And even though it succeeded in getting the name out there, and actually I ended up picking up the book and all these other, it succeeded, but I always called it me failing upwards, because in a lot of pieces of it, I feel like I failed. But on a whole, there was success. So I focus on that. I focus on the success of the failure. We got to do more of that kind of stuff. We got to take chances. But sometimes, money's money, and we need money to live in this society. So you got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. But I really like what you were saying about succeeding to fail, because I just took those books and we ran a $10,000 Kickstarter for them. Like literally those same books that raised $2,000, I brought them to Kickstarter like a couple weeks ago, and they raised almost $10,000 for the same thing, just by like repackaging, retooling, refiguring it out. And so there is a lot of success you can get from failure, especially if you know that the product that you have is something you have made, and you can resell it, you can relaunch it, you can repackage it forever once you've made it and you've made it well.
Absolutely. I mean, and then that's really it. Those last couple words, you made it and you made it well. When something leaves your hands and you review it and you hear things that people say, it's good. And then you also, in the opposite respect, it's bad. So when something is good and you repackaging what was the initial failure, you succeeded and you learn what to do, and and you were able to have that presence of mind to say, I'm not just going to chalk this up as a failure and never do anything else with this, where some people do. They just get defeated. but you're a professional. So you're like, you know what? I know this is good. I know this product has an audience. Let me change the venue. Let me do this and that. And you made those adjustments and boom, you got it. You know, you figured it out. But the problem comes is I think where people truly fail is not getting them, like picking themselves up, dusting themselves off and trying it again. And, you know, learn from your mistakes. What happens is people just, you know, internalize the failure and then they're done. And that is so the wrong thing to do. You got to keep doing it. You got to keep going.
Yeah, that is the theme that keeps coming up as I do these interviews with people who've been successful is like, you're just going to fail and you got to keep going up and you got to keep burning, like basically like burning yourself down like a phoenix and reemerging from the ashes every few years. Otherwise, like it gets stale, you get repetitive and like you'll have a failure that you can't like wipe off of yourself without like going through that sort of iterative process with your own career.
Absolutely. I mean, it happens every time. Even, you know, I'm sure you've dealt with it. I've dealt with it. But the thing is, once you feel that and you know you've had some success and you look back past that one failure you're harping on, you're like, you know what, this worked and that worked and this worked. And it kind of bolsters you. You're like, you know what, I can do this. Some failures hit harder than others. It's a given. You know, but it's all, to me, it's all steps on the ladder of when you succeed. And there's that factor. There's the X factor of you don't choose success, right? You work towards it, and that's really all you can do. It's hit or miss. And success is also like, you know, it's not subjective, but it's relative. There you go. Success is relative because being able to, let's say, produce 2,000 books and being able to sell them and breaking even, that's a success for people. That is like, that's great. And they have their characters out there and they've done this thing and they feel great. Other people who do the same thing, you know, feel like that's a failure because they didn't make any money off of it and they didn't get a movie deal and they didn't do all these things. So it was a total bomb to them. You know, you got to keep that in mind too. Like, what is your ultimate goal with this? Not just getting it out and doing the thing, but what do you want to come from this realistically? You know, and that's, to me, it keeps it's managing expectations, and that's it.
Yeah, and I have found the problem is that, the problem I had for a long time was that success is not just relative at the beginning, but it's relative to every stage of your career. Like your success now would feel like you're the biggest star on the planet to you 5 years ago, but like success now. So part of the struggle for me as a creative who's, you know, a mid-career creative is to understand that like, you know, this is a full-time job. It's been a full-time job for a long time. Like, you're successful on any means, and just because you're not as successful as you want to be, the success that you've had should not be downplayed just because you now have the next goal, because there will always be a next goal.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it really is, because if you stop, well, okay, so let's say you have a property that you do. And I hear this from a lot of people who go out into the world. They have IP and they want to get their name out there. So what they do is they make these deals. And some of these deals aren't great. Some of them are downright awful. And it kind of reminds me of the music industry a lot, where you get these discovered musical artists and they make a deal, record deal, and they don't get any money from that deal. All they want to do is sing, and they want to sing for people, and they want to sing because they love it. And then when they get extremely popular, more popular than they thought they could be, and you know that there's money involved, then you start thinking, well, wait a minute, I signed a deal. It's my work. It's my art. Why am I not getting any of this? So what ends up happening is it's almost a devaluing of self. Because you all you want to do is get your property out. All you want to do is have it done, and you're willing to take damn near any deal without thinking it through because you're not thinking for the future. And that's usually what ends up happening to a lot of people. They make these decisions just to get the thing out, just to have it out there, and they're willing to, take on these concessions that they probably shouldn't. Because giving ownership and making these different sacrifices in the long run, 5 steps ahead, it's just not worth it. So I think, honestly, if you take a step back, think it through, calm yourself a bit, it would help. At the end of the day, though, your stuff is out there. Let's say you take a bad deal. Your stuff is out there. People know who you are based on the thing. And it's a sacrifice. You have more in the chamber. And that's really what I liked, what you were saying. Like if you stop at the one idea, then you're no better than a one-hit wonder, and you might not even have a hit. You're supposed to have, you're an idea person. You have bullets, you know what I mean? Like you have a repertoire, you have a whole thing. You don't stop creating just because one thing didn't work out. You keep going. And I know that's a theme, but it's so true. I mean, it really is. You keep going, because if you have ideas, you're cranking out ideas every day. I have ideas driving. I have ideas in the shower. I got at least 10 different ideas just waiting around to be done. If something happened with my book, Midnight Tiger, I have a bunch of other ones. I'm launching another one in 2021, prepping this year. So you can't just sit on one idea. Now, again, like we said earlier, everything's relative. So if you only have the one idea, and being an IP creator not necessarily is your passion, you just had, let's say you're an engineer, you just had one idea, then it's probably best you think things through if this is your one thing.
Absolutely. I think it's so important that you have so many things. I mean, you've had Midnight Tiger for so long. I had my book Ichabod Jones Monster Hunter for about that long as well. And with Ichabod, I would never have been able to be full time with just Ichabod when I was starting out. But because I had a banger in Katrina and then a couple of other banger books that came out that were able to fund the company, Ichabod was able to grow an audience just sitting on my table. It was just this there, would be part of the conversation at conventions and part of the conversation, but it was never the main part of my table, even when it was only Katrina and Ichabod. So, but after 7 printings of that book, sometimes it's just you got the right product at the wrong time, and by being able to put more bullets in the chamber, as you said, you're able to let some of those things simmer, and you might suddenly come back to it. And if I told myself in 2014 my most beloved book would be Ichabod Jones Monster Hunter, and it would be the only comic that I ever did a second volume of, I don't think that I would have believed me because of the reception to Ichabod when it first came out. But having that, a career's worth of stuff allowed some of those lesser well-known books to sort of simmer until they found their own audience.
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel exactly the same, Russell. I mean, with Midnight Tiger, I had previous ideas, but I felt like, it's been 6+ years since I did it, and he's been a part of a crossover, he's part of a bigger universe and stuff like that. But if you'd asked me after the first issue hit at Action Lab, if I thought that I'd be returning to this, no, I wouldn't believe you, because it did okay, but it didn't do enough to do the complete series. The first issue did okay, and of course every issue after is in decline, but it didn't, when it hit, it's almost like you break even on the first one. Usually what you shoot for when you release or when you launch a series is you do well on the first issue, which is great because you calculate that into the drop of the second and third issues. And the second and third issues should be the break-even point, not the first issue. But if you're at the break-even point at launch, this is not a good sign. So yeah, that's basically what happened to me, and it just wasn't a point, because then it was like, well, this is not going to work out, and it's not even smart to finish because then you got printing costs and all this for the issues that are not going to sell. That's just throwing money away. And stopping at that issue made it easier for Action Art to recoup the funds it had, done from issues 0 through 2. So, and now it made money, but I'm just thinking if I had completed those last 2 issues back then, I would still owe money. So, it was a smart thing. It was sad because it was a little heartbreaking because, you put your love into this, but you have to move on. And now 6 years later, and I'm established as a regular freelancer at Marvel and done some work at Archie and Hasbro and all these different things, which has helped me learn more about the business. It helped me grow an audience, is all these different things. And I turn around, I look back, and now because of those things, the fan base for Midnight Tiger has grown. So it was almost like I planted a seed 6 years ago that's finally blooming.
Absolutely. I love that idea. I want to dive deep on Midnight Tiger because you've touched on it a little bit. I've also had Vito Del Sante and Sean Isaacs from Stray on the show, and your career kind of seems to combine what I learned from both of them back on the show, like the Midnight Tiger and the Stray. Kind of Sean went from Stray to working for D&D and then working for Marvel eventually, and then now he's like a successful creator, artist for those companies, and it all kind of started with this book. So could you tell me if I'm totally off base there first, and then second, talk a little bit about Midnight Tiger and the journey for that book?
No, you're dead on. Those guys they're family. They're I love those guys, and we're all peas in a pod there. You throw in Jamal Igle, who was already successful with Supergirl, him and Sterling Gates, and other things he had done. And we had a nice little tiny pocket of superhero universe back then, but just, focusing on those two, Vito and Sean. Sean is a workhorse, man. He was already doing a bunch of things, smaller things, and he grew his reputation within the industry as someone who not only can put out some great work, but, great designs and be on time. And he ended up, the right people saw him and, picked him up. And that's the smartest things they've ever done. Vito being the smartest because he made Sean the co-creator of Stray. And I've known Vito for, so many years, way back when Ape Entertainment was still around. And, we were, pretty, I don't want to say fast friends, but it was kind of fast. I mean, we just had a lot of things that we shared. And Vito's also, those two guys together outwork so many other creators that I know getting triple the success that they've seen. So, and that's just speaking the truth. But, with those guys, and they're always putting out things like Vito had World War Mob, and, his Golden Guard stuff was doing pretty good. I mean, that hit a snag. You talk about somebody who's got bullets in the chamber. That guy's got a ton of ideas, and he works hard, and their whole process is about giving the people content and enjoying working with friends. That's the other part. When you're not making any money, some of the enjoyment is just working with your friends and doing some cool stuff. And that's what they focused on, and they were able to do several volumes of Stray. I want to say 2 or 3, 2 for sure. And those guys are just amazing. So their trajectory was, honestly, if they had their druthers, even though, everyone is interested in working for the big two to some degree because of their characters. It's not necessarily, I want to work for DC, I want to work for this person. No, I like Nightwing. That's kind of how Stray came to be. They both were Nightwing fans. And, if any readers of Stray can feel that, in the book. So when I came up with Midnight Tiger and it, to kind of fit all into that universe anyway, we always talked about that kind of stuff. It was easy. It's pretty easy to fit, Stray and Midnight Tiger, into that. Same thing with Molly, where it's funny because when I finally get to talk exclusively about Midnight Tiger, you'll see that one of the biggest animes right now is My Hero Academia. And the main character, Izuku Midoriya, is a lot like the main character of Midnight Tiger, Gavin Shaw. So much so that it was freaky. It was pretty freaky that this, became what it was. Anyway, just talking about those guys, we all plan to do this book, both of these books, and share this universe forever, all four of us. It did not pan out that way, and that's unfortunate. But, they have a ton of potential that can do pretty much anything. Now, with Midnight Tiger, for me, it was kind of a love letter to superhero comics, to the comics that I grew up on, and, and my relationship to my father and my relationship to the city I grew up in, which is Compton, California, and some of the things that I saw, because in my heart, Gavin represents the young man I was living in that environment, where I never let the just that desolate, hopeless desperation overcome me, and I became part of it, because it's a virus, it's infectious, and you just start doing what you see other people do to survive, and it's basically subsistence. Like, very few of us are told to reach further than what we already see, and it's a survival game too, because the streets are rough. But I had my father. My father was a light to me. Vito was able to meet my dad. My dad's still around, and he was basically like Black Captain America to me, because he stayed positive. He was always friendly. He had some wisdom. My father isn't perfect, but shit, it's pretty damn near close. And, everybody who meets him just loves the guy. And they call him Pops. So the main character, Gavin's dad, is his nickname Pops. But yeah, the elevator pitch for Midnight Tiger is basically Peter Parker in Gotham. And when it first launched, when I launched it myself under my production company, Viz Media, which is now defunct, because we used to do work for Viz and other people. Me, Nate Lovett, Matt Lehman, a few other people. We did a lot of work there. So I produced it that way before actually I picked it up. And it was reviewed by Newsarama. And let me tell you, man, Russell, to this day, no matter what I've worked on, it's the one review that I keep going back to when I feel like crap, because it makes me happy. And when people saw the character, they were like, this is before Black Panther got popular. So, of course, this is 2014, let's call it between 2012 and 2014, but 2014. And they're looking at the character, didn't necessarily say anything about it. It wasn't until the buzz about Black Panther came out where people were like, oh, it's kind of like Black Panther. But fans, the internet. The internet is like a knee jerk. And then they start picking it up and they're like, it's actually more like Spider-Man. Well, Newsarama, I want to say Chris Aaron or did the review, but he said this is basically like what Stan Lee and Steve Ditko would have done had Spider-Man come out now. And I thought, wow, you can't get much better than that. Me, Dwayne Feenstra, who helped me script it, because I wasn't confident as a writer, even though going forward, and this is something I want to talk about later, is that the only reason why I had been writing for years, Russell, but I was told early on, and especially when you start working with the Marvel and DC, and people want to pair with you and do these things, that, well, artists are artists and writers, and there's not, artists should draw, or if they really just want you to work for them, they just, you should just draw. And that's basically what I chose. Like they basically made me or convinced me that just sticking to being an artist was it. But I was always creating. Ask anybody who's worked with me. So, I come up with ideas all the time. I remember Brandon Montclair called me a genius one time. So it's like, well, but fear holds you back. So my insecurities about writing, it wasn't, it didn't help me. And Kevin Grievous actually told me, he said, dude, you can draw and you can write. There's nothing holding you back. Like you got, it's like the golden goose. You can do it all. And I was inspired by guys like that. I was inspired by Fred Perry, who's done the Anti-Press book, Gold Digger, for God, it's almost at 300 issues, and he's done a video, OVA, own animation. He did the animation himself. He's done side projects. And it's all a love letter to all of his fandoms. Easton and Layer. I recently posted some of this stuff on Twitter about my inspirations. I am a huge fan of Japanese manga creators because most of them, aside from their assistants in the artwork, do everything. Akira Toriyama, Katsuro Otomo, all those guys, they're doing it themselves. So anyway, that's my inspiration for all this stuff. I can do it myself. And it took 6 years for me to just say, hey, we just did, Cthulhu's Hard to Spell, Terrible Twos. And that was like one of the first things, my piece was one of the first things I, wrote and illustrated that will actually be published in years, like 100%. Because I had somebody scripted and I did plots or something like that. No, I did the whole thing. And hearing your reaction and Kristen's reaction and a couple other people I let read it, it was just 100% reassurance that, yeah, I should have taken this advice years ago.
Well, it's so nice to hear that, but it's also so refreshing to hear somebody who has had the level of success that you've had still talk about like the fear that every creative goes through.
Oh yeah, we're all scared. But the difference between guys like me and you and all the other creators that are out there doing it and we're putting out books is we say, okay, yeah, there's fear, but I'm going to freaking do it anyway. So, and see what happens. Because it's not that we're married to our babies, we're not married to our darlings or whatever, but there is a little piece of us every time we put something out, every time we create something. So, it's just part of who we are as creative people.
Well, and there's a fear that look, if you put out another Beanie Baby, it's probably going to be okay because it's like a plush toy. But when you're creating a story, when you're crafting a story and continuing that story, whether you're creating something brand new, there's the fear that no one's going to respond to that brand new thing. But even when you're continuing something that has been successful or that people love, there's that fear that this is the time that I'm going to destroy everything. I'm going to not be true to the character this time, or they're not going to like this turn, or they're going to get to the end of this one and be like, well, now I'm bored, and then they're just going to fall off. And it doesn't matter whether you're creating something completely brand new or continuing something, because it's sort of this brand new thing every time. I don't know how even the most successful product that has been around for as many years as, I don't know, a soap opera has been around can at least have some of that fear that the story is now still continuing on and it's still possible to break it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, when you have fans, and here's a cool thing. I guess it's bittersweet because you have a fan base. You put out something and, there's a certain purity when it's yours and you got people that actually like it. You're going on with this thing and fans start growing. Especially, it's a reassurance where you're like, I created this thing that I love, that I like. Hey, there's other people out there that also are into it. They're into the thing that came out of my brain. And so when they become invested in your stuff, do you ever feel like there's an obligation to, feed the beast? You know what I mean? there's a thing where like Ichabod, like people are waiting for the next book and they love the story and stuff like that. And you have a ton of other ideas, but you also want to give the fans what they want.
See, I have a little bit different take on a bunch of different ideas, whereas like if I have an idea, I mold it into the story that I'm already telling. So like I have a series that I've been working on for a couple of years, and one that I'm writing now. And I'm like, I really want to talk about pterodactyls. And I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to throw a pterodactyl into some story at some point that I'm already working. So like I try not to. I used to have a whole bunch of little ideas, but now I find that because I have so many trains like moving through the station, it becomes a lot easier for me to be like, can I service this in one of the stories that I'm telling now? And if I can, because my stories are kind of weird, I can go a lot of places. But if not, then it either has to wait for years or I has to wait until I have more space, because I only have so much creating space. And because I put so much production into certain things, like I can't do those things. It's been really hard for me to come up with this, it was a lot of like last year really showed me that like, if I want to be successful and continue to do this and not get a job, I have to stay in certain lanes, at least for the most part, because those are the lanes that people will buy things from me. And as much as I want to believe that people will follow me anywhere, I don't follow my favorite creators everywhere, and I can't expect my audience to do so either.
Russell, that is the gospel truth, man. That is it. Man, I couldn't have said it better myself, where there's the adventurous, exploratory part of your creative brain has that tingle to expand, to go elsewhere. The practical, like, I need to make money off of this. I love it, but I also need to make money off this. So that's going to prevent me from doing X, Y, and Z. That's the thing that it helps us. It helps us because if we're able to do that, if we stay in those lanes and we make this money, if we make enough, we can experiment. We can do this thing, but we can't do one. We can't put the cart before the horse. So we have to, stay in those lanes and know where our audience is and the people who are going to read it, and continue to build that fan base. And, so once it's big enough, it will allow you to expand. But until it is, it's the smart move.
I think of Hellboy. And like Hellboy, like Mike Mignola's done a lot of other stuff, but like almost all of the things that he's done feed from Hellboy. And Hellboy is the brand that allowed him to do other stuff. And if you're not, I wish I had told myself this. I wish I had really, I heard it, but I wish I had like really thought about this when I first started my career, which is like, if the brand can break through, because it's so hard for a brand to break through, even just 1 point, if a brand can break through at 1 point and make Spanx or whatever, like it's the thing that they do, then that allows them to basically fund whatever crazy other stuff that they want to do. But if you're not pushing really hard on one lever, and this assumes that you have some traction, because what I find is a lot of creators are working on projects that I don't think will ever get traction because the audience just is not big enough, or their story is just not good enough, or the art style is not commercial enough, or so. But I'm making this, or it's just a project that they should iterate on because they're just too young in their career to have done something like really great. And I can tell like there's moments there, but it's just not like, so I'm assuming that you're not pushing hard on that lever, because you have to get to a certain level of quality to know the market and like know that there's an audience. But assuming you have traction on something that looks like it could be successful, the best advice that I could give somebody is triple, quadruple, centuple down on that thing. Because if you can break through and get your name to be in your right audience's mind, they will splinter out and follow you places. And your main Harry Potter thing will basically pay for any other random stuff that you want to do in the future.
Oh man, that's the truth. I mean, I think about guys like Dragon Ball creator Akira Toriyama, who man, he was living at home with his parents, and he was, he entered this contest for this manga strip. He lost. He lost the contest, but an editor who liked what he did saw he had potential and just started giving him little jobs. There was so many tons of jobs that he had done before, and it wasn't even Dragon Ball that made him famous. At least in Japan, it was Dr. Slump. But his name is synonymous with Dragon Ball because that's the biggest, that's the juggernaut that got created. And he was, it was just a spark, and he was inspired by what is that? The Chinese tale. Well, it'll come to me. Not Journey to the West, and it's this big thing. He didn't know it was going to be that. His editor didn't know it was going to be that. He just did this thing, and that's what it is. But if you look at it, once all that happened, he was doing video game designs because he built a brand. That particular style, what he was doing, where let's say the 7 or 8 things that he was doing before, he just didn't catch on. This was the thing. And they're like, we like that look. For whatever reason, the executive said, either, he's got a popular manga or whatever. Let's get that because we can sell that look. But he became a brand. And that's the thing, because when you get to a certain point, people don't just buy your work. They're buying your brand.
Absolutely. And I don't think it's articulated very well by managers and agents and people, the actual reason. Because when I started doing this, I was a screenwriter. I came to LA as a screenwriter. My manager said, you want to be number 1, 2, or 3 on somebody's list of one thing. Like, you don't want to be like this really good writer. You want to be like the go-to writer for Westerns or whatever the thing is, like buddy cop movies. And like, you want to be that one thing. And I was like, well, I want to write everything. And I don't think that people very articulate that exact thing that you're talking about like, if you are the number one person that does this thing, then whenever people make a list of the best things in that genre, you will be listed. And it is free publicity every single time. And it is free word of mouth every single time that if you can be listed as like the number one mythology person or the number one like person who does like YA Marvel style like action books, whatever the thing is, then it will, for the rest of as long as you can stay in that top 3, as long as you keep putting out good stuff, you will always, every single time, be top of mind. And that word of mouth referral stuff between businesses, between fans is the most valuable piece of marketing that you can have. And then it does become about making the next book, because then you can be like, well, now I just got to make the next book. And as long as it's good and these people know about it, they're going to keep buying it.
Well, that's how it works. I mean, that's exactly how it works. I love that you mentioned my brand, because that's basically my brand, which is, a lot of the YA big action superhero kind of thing. And because think about it, like, I love a Western. I actually did a Western themed comic that only a few people know. It's semi-recent last year. And, I can't say too much about it, but it was being shopped around, production and stuff. And that was one of the most fun things I've done because I love a Western. But I don't know if the general public will ever see it at all. What I'm known for, let me tell you, I've worked on so many different things so my 13-year freelance at Marvel anniversary is coming up, because it's coming up, I want to say February. And all that, I've worked on a ton of things, but the things that anybody remember me for are, I would say, really the top 2 is Midnight Tiger, my own thing, and Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. That's it. I might have worked on 10 different properties. Superb, I worked on for, 7 or 8 issues. Very few people associate me with that. I did covers for that. I helped redesign that. I worked with David Walker. I would say by percentage, if Midnight Tiger holds the top spot at, let's say, 55%. And Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur is 40%. The other 5% would be superb. And that was one of the things next to, I mean, all of them I'm proud of, but I got to do covers. I wasn't as involved as Lion Forge would let me be on that. So I'm pretty proud of the work that we did on that book. And I was at a convention recently in Long Beach. I mean, you were there. And only 2 people even looked at those books. Those 2 people bought them. I directed people towards it, but it was 2 people. I must have seen about 50 people over the weekend. And they just, if it wasn't a character that they knew, I sold out of Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. I sold out of all the popular things. Nobody even looked at Midnight Tiger. I mean, it was just it was all about pop stuff, unless they knew about it. And that's not always the case. I remember, depending on different shows, it's a different audience. So having, but it's all that young, energetic and stuff like that. Those are the jobs that I get, quote unquote, cast for, because I recently did Miles Morales, and I love Miles Morales. So it was great, and it's on my bucket list. But I was also thinking that it'd be nice to do. I did an Avengers thing years ago. It was a special thing for the military. I would love to take a crack at another Avengers thing. I can draw adults. I mean, other things I like to do is comedy and stuff like that. I mean, the thing for Cthulhu was hard to spell. That was like a dark comedy thing, but it also reflects some of the issues, like I talk about some of the things that interest me, and you know the topic of that story. So, that's the social commentary. I love social commentary too, because, when I grew up, that's the way comics were. Comics were always social commentary. Anybody who tells you otherwise has not been reading comics, not the way they should have been, or they just only took the surface from it. Even in what's deemed as all ages, it's still social commentary. Of course, some comics hit you over the head with it. Some comics are more subtle. But if you can have fun and you can do all those things, then that's great. But getting back to being ready or not, I remember my 13, when I first started, looking back, my first job, I wasn't ready. I wasn't even a competent artist. And I know that a lot of artists say that. I know they do. And a lot of writers say that. You go back and you look at your old work and you're like, God, how did I get a job? God, it's just a lot of self-deprecating. But knowing what it takes to do this job on all aspects of it, and I looked at that, and I cranked that out in about 5 weeks, and it was rough, and there was so many things I was doing wrong, but what got me to finish it was just excitement. And now I'm a natural overthinker. So now my issue is I overthink too much. But I knew then I wasn't ready. But one of the things is that you can't be ready until you do the job. And then over time you get ready. Eric Larson gave me some advice years and years ago when I was pitching the image like a madman. And he said that he could greenlight a book and it would die, basically, it would die on the vine, because I was like right at that edge where it was good, but not ready, that kind of thing, where it's like, you could be good, or this could be good, but you need about a half a step or two to get ready. And that's how I ended up hooking up with Jay Ferber on Noble Causes and stuff like that, because he's like, you need more practice. And I like that part of his ideology, is where in order to get better, you need to do the thing that you're trying to do. You need to do it at a higher level because you can see. And I tell people that all the time. So anyway, do things when you aren't ready, because the only way you can get ready is to do them. Don't try to keep doing these things. You learn from that process. You learn from seeing it at that level, and then you keep going. Now here in 2020, really, I feel like I can do the job pretty well. And I'm more confident in all of that stuff. But it took 6 years. I mean, well, more than 6 years, but that's the thing. You had to do things when you're not ready. Do it scared.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So we're nearing the end of our time together. I can't believe it's already almost been an hour.
Oh, no, I just looked up.
But I want to talk about your Kickstarter, which is live now, and my Kickstarter that is also live now. But I want to track this because you basically broke through originally with Midnight Tiger. Then you did a whole bunch of commission work for Marvel and other places, and now you're coming all the way back to your roots of creator owned. Is that right?
That is exactly right.
So can you talk about the new book?
Okay, so I'll give you I'll try to make this short and sweet. So for a long time, as we spoke, I was, for myself, because of the situation I had with the first Kickstarter, the failing upwards, I was definitely not trying to do that anymore, because that was a hard lesson. It was a lot of work and all that. There was some great stuff that came from it, but I was gun shy. But 6 years later, and after the character has grown, because I get emails and direct messages for years, the character has grown digitally, and the fan base has grown considerably. And I get these emails, hey, I love Midnight Tiger. As people want to cosplay the character, it's crazy. So when we said earlier, it was a seed that I planted, even though it didn't seem like that seed was going to grow, it's sprouting. You know what I mean? It's blooming right now. And, we had Stronger, which was done by my partner in crime, Vito Del Sante, Eric Ron Elslin, Wilson Reynolds Jr., Justin Birch. It was when I licensed the character to Action Lab so that they can keep it going, especially after Actionverse, which did okay. And people just loved the character, but I was so busy with Marvel stuff that I didn't want to go back, actually. I think building my name and reputation, all that was more important, and it did pay off, and it is paying off. But I also love to play in the Marvel sandbox, so that's also fun. But anyway, people were asking about that. They were like, you got to come back. And I wanted to come back, but it was funny because every time I wanted to come back to Midnight Tiger, and I don't want to say every time, but really recently, I would say 2017 and up, I got more work. I got more freelance work, so it kept me busy. And but now I know, one of my editors at Marvel let me know when my next job is going to be. So I planned. And after, I would say, about 20 direct messages about Midnight Tiger, and me coming back to it, it's time. But here's the thing. It's always been a point of contention with myself and other people who are interested that story that ended at issue 2 on a cliffhanger needs to be completed. It was slated for a 4-issue mini, and you got a 0 issue out of it, sure, which is the origin, but the last 2 issues weren't done. So, and I was like 5 completed pages into the 3rd issue, and I just didn't do it anymore because it wasn't going anywhere. Anyway, I'm back to finish it, and I'm going to shelve Midnight Tiger because I don't know when or if I'll ever be back to it. But I am going to give all the fans not only the complete story, but I will be back as a writer and artist on it. I'll have Vito Del Sante as the editor on the book, and I'll have Erica Schultz, who's one of my best friends, who's done all types of stuff, DC, Hawk Girl, Marvel stuff. So she's great. She's going to be lettering. I haven't picked a colorist yet, although I have a couple that I want to tap once I get more pages in the chamber there. And then I'm going to be launching a Kickstarter on February 10th. So, yeah, so I went from not wanting to do Kickstarter to actually figuring out a way that I can do the Kickstarter. And the way I'm going to do it, because I believe in this whole digital revolution thing, I do enjoy actual physical copy, but we're headed into a digital age, and you can get the comic digitally. And if I, do this right with the way I'm going to do the Kickstarter, it'll be 80% digital, and I'm going to be as rewards. You're hearing it first. The rewards will be the actual original pages from the book. So that means that the actual shipping will be down to less than 20 separate shipments. So that keeps that completely low. My overhead is low. And then with proceeds, I'll be able to pay, Erica and Vito and my colorist, whoever that may be. And I'll be able to do a short print run, about 500 copies to have at the convention to help promote the book. Because when Action Lab gets the file and it becomes, and actually gets published through Action Lab, then that'll be for the greater audience. But these are really just, this Kickstarter is not only to get the last 2 issues done, because it's going to be in 2 parts. So it'll be an issue 3 Kickstarter, and then it'll be an issue 4 Kickstarter that'll probably hit in November. Because, like I said, I have a possible Marvel assignment or whatever supposed to come through in a few months. So in between that time, that's what I'll be doing, and I'm hoping it works out. Because that way people can get not only a piece of my original artwork, but from my own character, which will mean a lot. And I know a lot of people are always asking me also about my originals, because I've been working digitally for at least the last 3 or 4 years exclusively. But I'm going to do this, just so I can have rewards to do and get the book done at the same time. So there's really no extra to be done. Anyway, I'll have shirts for merchandise to sell at conventions and stuff like that. That's what that's for. So if you're a Midnight Tiger fan and after the Kickstarter is over, find me at a convention, because I'll be on a convention circuit this year, and get some Midnight Tiger, like a shirt and a poster. And then hopefully, after the Kickstarter for this issue 3 is done, you'll be able to get a hard copy, but only at seeing me at a convention. So yeah, that's the plan.
Awesome, man. All right. So this is the last thing of the show. Artists, a lot of artists listen to this show, or people while they're driving. So they're kind of tuned out a little bit. So this is when they, hopefully not, but I know artists, like you're down at your drawing table. Is this the time I'm going to ask you to pick up for a couple of minutes while Ray imparts his best piece of advice that he wants you to leave the show with? Could be something that you said already, could be something brand new, and then tell people where they can find you, and then plug the Kickstarter one more time.
Okay, so let's start with the advice. The best piece of advice I can give anyone, no matter what your field is, but I'm really talking to our comics community, is that people want to hear your voice, and they want to hear your voice through your writing, through your art, and art meaning letters, colors, inkers. It's your voice. Have people invest in that. And if you like something, do all the fan art you want. If you're not feeling a trend, then don't follow it for whatever reason. Just be you. I mean, we were talking about brands earlier. Build your brand. Have them invest in who you are as a person. I would rather people who get me and who are interested in me follow me than trying to pander to those who usually wouldn't. So be authentic. That's the best thing. And work with that in mind. Let's see, plugging the Kickstarter, February 10th. I'll be launching, and it'll be one of those things where, because I've made a decision, and usually when I make a decision, I just go, so it's only giving me about 2 weeks to get it ready. But we already have, like I said, the first 5 pages are completely done. I'm going to have Erica letter them soon. And I'm going to be doing the new cover for issue 3. The old cover has already been used for, I think, the previous Stronger Kickstarter by Action Lab Entertainment, so they had that one. But a new cover, be new art, all that stuff, and that's going to go up on February 10th under my new studio IP, which is called Studio Sky Tiger. So, and it's a combination of Midnight Tiger and a property that I'm going to be working on called Sky King Horus. And that's much later. So yeah, hit me up on the Kickstarter. You can follow me now if you find me on there. What's that other thing, Russell, you wanted me to talk about?
Where we can find you online.
Oh, I'm easy to find. I try to make it as easy as possible. You either type in R.A. Height or Ray Anthony Height, and you can find me. I'm the only one. Well, you might find my son, who's just Anthony Height, but it's mostly me. So R.A. Height, I'm on Instagram. I'm not, although I have a fan page on Facebook, I'm no longer on Facebook as like a regular personal account. That's gone. But I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter. So those are the main things you can find me at. If you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to DM me. I talk to everybody. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thanks, Russell. It's always fun talking to you, man. Like, seriously.
So that was my interview with Ray Anthony Height. I sure hope you enjoyed that one. I know I did. If you did, head on over and check out his social medias or his website. And please go check out Cthulhu is Hard to Spell, The Terrible Twos on Kickstarter now. Ray Anthony Height has a story in it, and it is pretty fabulous. And if you like this show, make sure to like, subscribe, and rate us. That is how we know we're doing a good job in giving you all of the things that you want. Head on over to thecompletecreative.com/podcast and subscribe today. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great day.